Yo, what it do, y'all? It's your boy Izakage. Today we're about to check out Boruto manga chapter 26. Momoshiki gives Boruto his god powers for the final fight versus Jura. Let's do it.
Boruto manga. Boruto is currently in the toughest position of his life. He recently took on Jura in a 1v1, the newest and one of the most powerful villains the series has ever seen. And from that fight, he got brutally beaten and outmatched in terms of strength. And it makes sense, Jura being the incarnation of the Ten Tails, there should be no surprise. Its immense strength, chakra reserves, and regenerative powers would be too much for Boruto to handle. You might be thinking, Boruto is supposed to be stronger than what he is. I say that because of his genes. He's an Otsutsuki who houses Momoshiki and has access to all of his abilities and techniques. The truth is, Boruto simply cannot reach his potential right now. He doesn't have access to all of his Otsutsuki powers and abilities because most of that power resides in the Karma Seal. Throughout the time skip, Boruto has naturally developed the base abilities of the Otsutsuki, like the ability to fly and heightened regeneration power, but the abilities that we
Just in case y'all didn't know already, Boruto, he can fly.
want to see Boruto perform, like the ability to create rifts or absorb ninjutsu, is all behind the karma. He's still unable to use the Karma Seal because of the fear that Momoshiki would take over his body and do Lord knows what. So that's mainly the reason of why he developed another form of space-time ninjutsu, like the Flying Raijin, to kind of compensate for that inability to use the karma. I don't want to dive too deep into the specifics, but so far, FTG is looking like the perfect ability for Boruto. And I actually made a video going in depth of why the Flying Raijin was so important for Boruto to learn and how it affected the overall story completely. I highly recommend you guys check that out if you haven't already. If you've seen that video though, you're
That's dope how he developed his his space-time ninjutsu is dope. It's just dope.
definitely an OG. I made that one during the beginning stages of Two Blue Vortex. So getting back on track, now that Boruto realizes he can't defeat Jura off pure skill and IQ, he turned to Momoshiki. Not because he believes Momoshiki is just that strong he can destroy Jura in one shot or anything, but he believes if he's able to use Momoshiki's power, it'll give him the necessary raw power to defeat Jura. Now thinking about it a little,
Facts. That's why he's trying to. That's pretty much why he's going down this route. It's his only chance.
further, when Boruto told Momoshiki that if we're able to defeat Jura, he'll give him his body, what he meant wasn't Momoshiki and himself, but he meant himself along with Kawaki. That's why I said Boruto is probably in the toughest position of his life. Let's look at it like this. Boruto has been made it known that he can't defeat Jura without Kawaki's help, which is the whole reason he shifted the entire direction of the timeline so that Kawaki could gain the necessary strength earlier in order for them to take on Jura and be able to come out victorious. However, that feat isn't possible because Boruto has one tiny problem. He can't fight with Kawaki because of karma resonance. So basically, this is Boruto's solution to this problem. He plans to fight Jura again with Kawaki very soon because he understands that the only two people that have any chance of bringing him down is himself along with Kawaki because of their Otsutsuki genes. You gotta fight a monster with another monster, if that makes sense. Because Jura's strength surpasses human comprehension, it'll take divine power to bring him down. So because Boruto believes that his karma will give him the necessary buff in order to take Jura down, he's ready to sacrifice himself to make that happen. So this brings us to the main plot of next chapter, which will feature a brand new Momoshiki cover. Chapter 25 was more about ending the Tsunagakure arc, the arc that lasted from chapter 16 to chapter 24, so that's 8 chapters, which is almost a full year of content. The arc was longer than most
Yo, a whole year. They was putting in work. I gotta commend them for that.
expected, but now that it's over, this was sort of a reset chapter. And I want to make sure I emphasize this fact because if I'm going to reveal what we may possibly see next chapter, I gotta make sure you guys know that most of the events that occur in this chapter may not carry over, like Moegi's recovery and Sarada and Sumere's conversation, most of which was only a result of what brewed up during the last arc. So for chapter 26, I think we can fully expect us to dive into Boruto and Momoshiki's conversation. And depending on who you ask, that might be good news. So in this conversation, I expect to learn about the details of this deal that they're working on, because Boruto just offered up his body to Momoshiki in exchange for his power. And right before the chapter ended, Momoshiki gave this intriguing look. So he's interested in what Boruto has to say now. He piqued his interest because in order for Momoshiki to give him power, Boruto offered him something that he believes is of equal exchange. It's the law of equivalent exchange, and Boruto understands that very well. So he didn't come to Momoshiki with that proposal without something very good. But what you all might be thinking, Boruto and Momoshiki aren't dumb. Boruto isn't just gonna give Momoshiki his body without a loophole. He knows that, and Momoshiki knows that as well. They don't
He just had to show that part, huh?
trust each other. Boruto knows that if he gives up his body, he potentially puts his friends, family, and the planet he worked so hard to protect in great danger. So the loophole in question is Kawaki. The deal is basically he can have Boruto's body, but at that moment, Kawaki will destroy Boruto's body as soon as Momoshiki emerges. This was always what Boruto wanted to do, because throughout the time skip, he learned that his character was a character of sacrifice, which is why he went from this optimistic child who thought he could fix everything with his own power to now a more realistic young man who is currently realizing just how big this situation really is. We're hinted at this mindset change throughout the series. Ever since Two Blue Vortex started, he gave us these subliminal messages that insinuated that he was ready to sacrifice his life or die at any moment. And through the power of Kashin Koji's prescience ability, he was probably informed of a specific future outcome, an outcome where he was in this very situation you see here. Or it could be the case that Boruto created this path himself. He's such a smart character that I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest if that was the case, which would make everything have 100% more meaning, because Boruto is creating a future in which Koji wasn't able to see. We already see that Koji was surprised to see that Kawaki came to save Boruto, which tells us that Koji wasn't fully aware that Boruto planned this future out. It was only last minute where he learned of Kawaki's intervention. So this future that Boruto's striving for is that of sacrifice. As long as he defeats Jura, he's alright with disappearing, especially since there is no known way to reverse the effects of omnipotence. His future will always have a question mark tied to it. Or another possibility, it could be the chances that they actually defeat Jura could just be extremely low. It could be only a few futures out of hundreds where he actually defeats Jura. So at the end of the day, Boruto has the same goals as before, to knock some sense into Kawaki, take care of Code and the Ten Tails, but he's just realizing to do all that is gonna take sacrifice, and the one to make that sacrifice has to be him. So this is the mindset that's causing Boruto's decision to die by Kawaki's hand when this is all over. Now, is it gonna happen like that? Probably not, but currently that's Boruto's mindset. So as far as the conversation between Momoshiki and Boruto, in chapter 26, they will further reconcile their relationship enough for Boruto to be able to borrow his power. I also know Momoshiki is going to talk to Boruto about the Ten Tails. This is the first time he's ever going to speak on the Shinju, and just because the Otsutsuki are used to using these Ten Tails as seedlings for divine trees, their knowledge on such topics should be more advanced than most. So the craziest thing we can learn in this new chapter will come from Momoshiki, and it's something we've been trying to figure out for quite a while. Exactly how did the karma affect the Ten Tails enough to bring upon this phenomenon? In chapter 6, Boruto said something similar to that, but ever since then, he never brought it up to anyone ever again. He said that Code's chakra was affecting the Ten Tails via the claw grimes, because without being fed an Otsutsuki, they're already developing into divine trees. He then says that since the karma is from Ishiki, and that means it's of Otsutsuki essence, he believes because of that, it's having some sort of effect on them. So this is why I'm excited to read their upcoming conversation, because we could potentially get more lore about the Ten Tails And what specifically about the karma is affecting the Shinju to the point where they are able to not only evolve into divine trees, but also gain intelligence. He could also know some secret way to take them down too. They keep Ten Tails as pets, so I wouldn't be surprised if Momoshiki knew something about them that'll cause Jura to have a harder time fighting Momoshiki, which is why he could potentially be a great matchup for him, simply because he's in Otsutsuki. Even if Momoshiki isn't stronger than Jura, having knowledge on your opponent and how their power works goes a long way. Other than this conversation between Boruto and Momoshiki, it's also important to note that we haven't seen Kawaki yet. Him being a key factor in allowing everyone to escape safely, we're gonna see him in this upcoming chapter in what he chose to do once he returned to Konoha. If it involves a motto, we could potentially get that flashback we were expecting in chapter 24. Well, we got a flashback, but not the one that was expected. We wanted to see Amato remove his limiters and what happened after that. Because we know as soon as he got them removed, he went straight to Sunagakure. Exactly how did he get there? Did he fly or use space-time ninjutsu? What seems insignificant will actually help us understand Kawaki's power a little more. There's also a special command phrase that Amato uses once he removes one of his cyborg's limiters or puts them to sleep. Kawaki is one of his cyborgs now, so he has both of these commands built into him, which is why he was able to put Kawaki to sleep once he pressed him about his limiters. Like I said, it may seem insignificant, but that's something a lot of people want to see because it adds more depth to the overall story once it's all said and done. So other than Kawaki, something I'm even more confident that's going to be included in the next chapter is Mamoshi's next move. Just building off the prior chapter, remember when the last arc ended, Kashin Koji said that Momoshi was after her now because of the actions of Boruto. This is the setup for the next big event to happen in the story, or we could say the next big arc. They're just giving it a little hype before it starts to play out. From hearing this news, what's Ada's next move? What's gonna happen to her? How is she gonna prepare to be attacked? Of course, this sets up an inevitable matchup between Damon and Mamushi, but what are the events that leads up to this climax? That's something they have to build on next chapter. Even if it's later on in the chapter, which I believe it will be, something needs to happen that puts pressure on the main cast of the story. Don't let anyone get too comfortable, or if they don't see it, we will. And that's how we'll know that something is brewing up in the shadows. It's almost like in chapter 7 when Jura said he was going to visit Naruto. He didn't say it, but we knew this meant he was going to invade Konoha. And through this invasion, this would be the first time everyone not named Boruto or Kashin Koji would know of the Shinju's existence. So there was a sense of hype and anticipation there. It gave room for hundreds of theories and possibilities to be born from just one statement. It'll be the same thing for the new chapter. And guess what? There's even more anticipation there because we know this will lead up to Damon fighting Mamushi, which could also lead up to more theories about how his Shinjutsu works and potential weaknesses of his technique. And just adding on to that, we can get an explanation on why Mamushi was able to see through the Senrigan. So chapter 26 is going to be more about planting more future seeds in the series. And we're going to finally start seeing the next big arc manifest right in front of our eyes. So I'd say chapter 6 is going to be similar to chapter 25, but the undertone is going to be more intense and it's going to bring upon some suspense because of that intensity. What's going to happen to Boruto, the status of Kawaki, and possibly a flashback on him getting his limiters removed. But most importantly, it's going to begin the next big arc that will feature more action from characters that were inactive for the majority of Tubular Vortex, like Damon. So that's what I feel like we can probably expect for chapter 26. If I was to take a shot in the dark, there could be a possibility we'll get a check-in with Code. Nothing insinuates that to be a possibility right now, but it'll be something random that Ikimoto adds to throw us off, or add more shock value to the story, which does pretty good for the overall performance of the chapter. And because we haven't seen him in quite some time, I want to say that could be something to look out for. So tell me real quick, what do you want to see for chapter 26? Was it something I mentioned in this video? Or is it something I completely overlooked that should be brought to our attention? Please let me know. But other than that,
All right, y'all see it's getting crazy. Chapter 26, you feel me? It look like Boruto, he done made that decision. He about to go ahead and go fight Jura. We about to see Kawaki, hopefully. Haven't seen him in a minute. Like to see how strong he got. You already know he's strong as hell. But yeah, I'm excited for the next chapter. And let me know if y'all like this video. And I'll catch you on the next one. Deuces.